Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I am Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean, and this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Check us out online at couplesynergy.com or on Facebook and Instagram at Couple Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review or send any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couple Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 20 years.
You know, everyone says you should work on a relationship, but nobody teaches us how. So we've created this podcast to teach people what they can do to create the relationship they've always dreamed of
with the partner they fell in love with. On today's episode, we welcome a special guest, Angela Zender. Thank you so much for being on our podcast and co-hosting with us today.
Again.
Yes, hi. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yes. And Happy New Year also, which is coming up right next week. So just want to say to all of you out there, we are so grateful for all of our listeners and for those of you tuning in to Couple Synergy. It really makes us feel like we're making a difference, in doing this podcast and getting this great content out to you, our listeners.
We're really excited because we are nearing 100,000 unique downloads.
Yes, we are. And hopefully we'll be able to start off 2022 with 100,000
plus
unique downloads. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I just wanted to read off a review that we got from Daryl and Veronica, who we had interviewed. They are with Alliance Seminars Coaching. And if you haven't heard their episode, definitely check it out because they are a military couple and they have mentored military couples, and they have some really great kind of perspective and feedback. But they wrote a review for us.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they said Ray and Jean asked awesome questions that led to a great discussion on relationships and reaching your marital potential. In addition, the topics led to information that will help listeners on a couple's growth journey and provide them with relationship practices that they can easily adapt. Ray and Jean have created an outstanding way to take their experiences and those of their guests to help build community throughout the virtual world.
Wow, that's perfect. That's like totally our goal.
Yes, that was really an awesome review. Thank you so much, Daryl and Veronica. We wish you all the best. And so today, what we're going to be talking about is...
How about I throw in the topic?
All right.
It was a topic that we already, had thought about a couple weeks ago. And so then we wrote it down so we could be sure to podcast it. And this came from our own interactions. The quote was something like, "You can't feel comfortable with someone unless you can joke with them and fight with them."
Yeah, I think this is a really good topic. And I know we all three of us have been talking about it, going back and forth about this very topic.
Well, we're empty nesters, and we've had at least one of our kids in our home since December 11th, and it's December 28th. You guys will be here till, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's very different. You have to, consider other people when you are living in confined spaces with people that you haven't really lived with. And we all have different habits. And so...
You mean it brings about some tension?
The holidays never do that.
No, holidays are so easy for everyone.
So, Andrew, used to being in control in your house, and then we're all together, and you have your ways, and you have your ways, I have my ways, the other kids have their ways, and sometimes we kid each other about that.
Yeah, especially me. I'm a big kidder. I think that's why we started this topic, right?
Yeah.
Is because I'm a big kidder.
Mm-hmm.
I kid around with people. But then I said, well, I can't joke around with someone that I don't feel close to.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And then Jean threw in the fight with, right? Because
Right.
if you felt close to them, you figured you could fight with them as well.
You know what's interesting is that the Matrix just came out with its its latest movie, right? But there is an awesome quote in one of the Matrix where Neo is fighting this one guy who helps the Oracle. You know, he's like the bodyguard of the Oracle. And he starts fighting him, and then the guy stops him and says to Neo, you can't know someone truly until you fight them or fight with them. And it relates to what we're talking about here, right? Is in order to really know someone, you have to be vulnerable with them. And with vulnerability comes frustration, comes, stress and difficulty getting along. I mean, I think that's just part of growth.
It's part of relationship. You can't be honest and be politically correct. It's not possible. There's no nice way to say, hey, what you're doing is pissing me off. Right?
Right.
And if you try to be nice, that comes out as passive aggressive.
Right.
Well, it's just not going to come out genuine.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I could see how it would sound passive aggressive. Like, yeah, sure. Whatever you want to do, I'm okay with that. Yeah, it's just not going to sound genuine. And what you're doing is you're holding back your true feelings of, maybe frustration. And that's okay. But where does it become a problem? Like, holding back and, keeping it in, we know that that's a problem, right?
Uh-huh.
Because you're not being honest, you're not developing the relationship. But then where is kidding around, where can that become a problem, right? Where can actually voicing what you feel inside become a problem?
When you get squeezed, right?
Right.
What do you get when you squeeze an orange?
You get orange juice
Why?
because that is what is inside.
And it doesn't matter if Angie squeezes the orange
No.
or your boss or whoever, right? So I think that it's like the hindbrain, right? The hindbrain that's really reactive. Once you get a certain level of something, we all have a switch that flips.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes from kidding to attack.
Not so funny.
Not so funny. And you go into attack mode because you're like, back off, right? Would you say?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important thing because I really believe that anything that you can talk out loud about, you can resolve and fix. It's the things that aren't being said that are even a bigger problem, even if the things that are being said are not coming out nicely.
Well, then I think it comes down to intention then. Like, what is your intention? Right? Kidding around, if the intention is to, give little jabs out of a place of endearment, then I think that is very different than kidding around from a place of trying to poke.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference. I'm just thinking the content so far might get things mixed up, right? Because we started out with this idea of telling someone that what they're doing is pissing you off. That's not the same as what we're talking about with the joking, right?
No,
like
right.
the way, like, just the idea of like Ray joking with me. I don't think it's because I'm doing something that's pissing you off, right? That's getting you angry.
No.
No, it's his joking that gets you angry,
Oh, okay.
right? At a certain point.
Sometimes it has.
It seems to me too, if there's like a volley going back and forth, like if you're joking or teasing someone and they tease you back,
Mm-hmm.
it feels better than if it's like 5 shots at one person.
Yeah, then you're actually picking on someone.
Yeah.
I think that's very different then. And then it also goes back to what's the intention behind it, right? I mean, are you like the little kid poking their sibling in the back of the car, like poke, 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 just to get a rise out of them, right? Or are you actually trying to connect and use humor in a way to connect?
I think the humor does soften maybe some of that initial tension. And if it stays in that place where both people are sort of pushing on that in the same rate, like
Balanced.
the volley.
Like if it's balanced, right?
Yep. Then I think that does lead to the connection. If it's out of whack, I think it finds a way to correct itself.
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe the next step, the third thing here is if we're going off of you can joke with someone and fight with them, right? And feel comfortable. If you can do both of those things, then you genuinely feel comfortable with someone. Then that means there's love there, right? And you can't, maybe in order to have some kind of love, that bond in any kind of relationship, you have to be able to do those two things.
I would agree. I would totally think that that's a requirement for a relationship. You think about just group therapy, all right? In all of our training, when we went through that, learning about group therapy, what was the most important part of the group? It was the conflict, right? And so if a group came together and you're doing group therapy and they're just being very kind and very nice to each other and they're holding back their opinions, you don't have a good group. You're not going to get to anything. You're not going to get to issues and help people really resolve things. So it's only until the group starts challenging each other. That's the part where the change actually happens.
Before that happens, there has to be rapport. There has to be some level of connection.
Right.
In order for the group to sustain pushing through a conflict to grow through something, right?
Right.
And so that's what you're talking about. There has to be that connection, has to be there. If you're walking down the street and someone comes up and starts joking with you, it's very weird.
Oh, no, you'd be like, what's going to happen now?
Like,
it'd be
that was
very
weird.
unsettling, right? Because you don't know them. And you don't know if they're trying to manipulate you in some way or what's their agenda, right? So that rapport, what you're talking about, that bond has to be established first in order to feel comfortable to have conflict. And it's only through conflict then the relationship can evolve and become stronger.
And I think when you go through that, you also learn who you are, right? When you have those difficult conversations and you have to answer difficult questions, you have to do some soul searching to express yourself in a way, because it's not like you're being challenged, but you're being asked to identify something more at a depth level within you of how you feel about something, right? No matter what that thing is.
Right.
And you do that a lot, Jean, with asking me, how does it feel? How do you feel? And there's times where I don't want to tell you because also it's hard to say. Or I mean, in my own waterfall of a brain, I figure whatever truly I'm feeling, it says way more about me in the situation than what I'm pointing at as the problem, right? Or to blame.
I think that's true for all of us. Whenever we are in that place where it feels that intensity is something that may be in a different relationship was something that was not safe, something that was not okay. And I remember when we were first dating, I argued a lot with people. Do you remember that? I debated.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I actually said that to you.
And that was something that was very common in my house. And something my dad did, my siblings did. And it was like normal for me. And it was sort of like if you stayed with it long enough, you'd realize that you're both sort of saying the same thing and maybe just from a different perspective. But I don't do that so much anymore.
But again, I think we have to go back to intention, because if someone were debating with you because they wanted to understand you more and it could potentially create a stronger bond, I think that intention is very different than someone debating with you just because they want to make you feel uncomfortable, or they want to put you in an uncomfortable position, right? For some type of power, power and control struggle.
Or because they want to win, right?
Because they want to win,
if
right?
they're debating because they want to win, whatever that means, then that is not what you're talking about,
Exactly.
right? That's not going to help a relationship.
Right, because the intention is now, it's not pure, right? And the intent is not to create connection. It's really to cause more disconnection.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me that guys are really good at this. They're really good at taking shots at each other and volleying it back and forth and not taking it so personally. I don't know if women are so good at that.
I don't think so.
No.
I think that's a really good point to bring up, because if, when I meet a guy for the first time, you're kind of feeling each other out. You're trying to, figure out where the other person's coming from. And it quickly does get to this kind of joking around with each other, if you feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, it just stays very formal and it dissipates. The relationship doesn't continue on.
Because you can't fight with someone you can't joke with.
Right. But in this case, the rapport is not fully built. It's kind of like humor is used in a way to continue building the rapport.
I got to give a shout out to Uncle John with that one, because you and him, it was always really funny. Like, we'd go camping and you'd be like, oh, Uncle John, he's going to know I messed this up or something. And now we're really close with them, and it's very different than, like, I haven't heard you be like, oh,
Well,
if a tent blows down or something.
But they would rush to go get their spot, get set up, and then be able to watch us set up camp and, have some jokes about it.
Yep.
About what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. Mostly what we're doing wrong. Right. But it became a source of, that connection and building that rapport.
Yeah. And I would say with women, it's like, if you try to joke with them too early, or it's so offensive to them. Like, we're so much more sensitive. Like, well, what'd you mean by that? Where it's like, I don't like that person. I don't want to go by them anymore. Like, we're much more like that for some reason.
And I think generally for me, I'm more conservative, right? Just in the fact of like deciding if I'm going to joke with someone. And so this is generally whether it's a man or a woman, right? So like a potential friend or a coworker. I don't think I generally start out with the joking. I have to sense something that makes it feel safe enough. Or maybe it's easier for me to sense when it's not safe enough.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
I think I do typically...
James, buy me a Coke.
I think I do typically joke with people I don't know. Like, I'll throw something out there, and it might actually be a joke about myself or a joke about, like, something about the environment, not a joke about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, and that kind of can be a little bit of an icebreaker.
Yeah, I would say I kind of use it as like a temperature gauge to kind of see where that person is at, and if I can connect with them or relate with them. Yeah, keep in mind that I grew up with two younger sisters, and my mom was really the person that stayed at home and raised us. My father was, worked long hours, so I rarely saw him, and there wasn't much of a joking relationship that I had with him at all. So for me, humor was not modeled. And so the humor that I would be in contact with was with my peers, and so that whole guy stuff where guys would kid around with each other and that sort of thing, it was not, it didn't come second nature to me at all. So I grew up learning how to use humor in a way to test the waters and see if this is a safe person to develop a relationship with.
That's interesting, because whenever I see you with your friends from high school,
Yeah.
you always start out joking.
Right.
calling each other some weird thing or
Yeah.
like you don't say hello. You're like,
Right. Yes. Hey, salamander, or some, with some really weird things.
yeah. You guys do a lot of joking.
That is true.
I think it's really interesting too when you look at male-female relationships, because women are more sensitive. We'll get really uptight about something that bothers us, and if our partner jokes with us, they can usually crack us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't take ourselves so seriously, and we laugh with them. We're like, okay, we're all funny. And in a very long-term relationship, there has to be those ebbs and flows of, pushing on something, having conflict, and the conflict can actually get resolved then with joking. So the joking can start a conflict and it can end it.
Well, one of the most important things that women look for in a relationship is whether, the man can make them laugh.
Humor, yeah.
Humor.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is a number one, top 3 characteristics that women look for.
Do you know what chemistry gets released when we're laughing?
Oh, that's adrenaline and, all of the feel-good dopamine, feel-good neurotransmitters.
So we had that couple on, the laughter couple.
Right.
And they were saying even fake laughing is going to release those chemicals. And I think the fact that the female brain is so over paying attention to so many things, that humor makes you get right back in your body and forget about all that stuff, right? Because our mind is always like, okay, I got to do this. I got to go over there. The kids are here. This is da. We have that brain that's just always looking for what's next. And that humor helps us just totally drop all the balls and just be present.
So then I was figuring in this episode we'd bring our own examples, and then that just reminded me of one, which was yesterday, today, and all the days we've been together, where someone asked me a question in the dining room, right? And it was a yes or no question, but I end up explaining. I start talking and I say this, if depends on this, etc., right? And then Ray's like, wow, that was a long way to answer it. So do you mean no? So see, in a way, that is an example of a joke, right?
Sure.
Which, again, if we're talking about another woman, right, that comes and gives you a meta report, you might not say something, right? If you're not comfortable with them.
No, if I don't know them, I'm not going to kid around with them, right? Because they might take it personally. They might think that I'm criticizing them or making a judgment, about them.
So then, how were you sure that I wouldn't feel that way?
Oh, because if you did, I would just crack another joke and make it even more funny.
I would say, okay, that's your answer. I would say if let's say if I did, which sometime in the past, I'm sure, when you had tried to joke, I took it personally, then maybe I would ask you or push you or blow up, right, in a way, and then you'd have the opportunity to explain. Like, I'd still be around to listen to your explanation, right? Whereas not everyone would.
Right.
If we're not close to them.
And, in those cases, if you would blow up or whatever, I would just, get a kitchen towel, I put it on your shoulders, and I would say, now you're super pissed.
Which you've never done before.
No, but there's a first for everything.
According to the research, 69% of who we are will never change. And those are the edges that we have to learn to really just be tolerant and accepting of people around in order to have a relationship. Because if you are going to be so sensitive that you can't tolerate other people's differences, you can't really be in relationships with people. And those are the things that are kind of funny, right? That we all do, all these quirky little things.
We all have quirks. Absolutely. And
like yours is, you always say no First thing about everything, you'll say no.
No.
Nope.
No, that's not true.
See? And that's just something that, I watch you do that with the kids, and then it's different for them because I'm just like, oh, whatever, that's not the final answer, it's the first answer. And then you've heard it and been like, oh,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, just let it simmer.
You've heard it too?
I've heard you say no.
Say no, yeah.
Yeah. So we all have it. And that joking kind of helps us release some of that tension when it's not such a great fit of how weird we are as people. Like I don't like plates in front of me.
Right. Yes, and we can make fun of that because that's really, really funny when you do that. But it's about understanding where it's coming from, right? I have a client who does the same thing, where he says no every time his wife wants to try something new. And for him, he explained it in that he takes a lot longer to make decisions about things. So for him saying no, it's really, let me think about it, right? Give me some time to process that. And he's feeling pressured to make a decision in that moment when he needs more time. So to understand where that's coming from, it helps so that, the partner doesn't take it personally then.
That's interesting because when I ask you a question, you usually take a full 30 seconds to a minute before you answer. Right? We had this in the car today. You asked him a question, he didn't answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
started responding to what I would have thought he'd answer.
So you were assuming what was going on in my head.
Oh, yes.
And then you responded in response to that assumption. And for me, in my head, it's the gears are turning and there's smoke coming out of my ears and I'm trying to process and think of something. Sometimes I'll forget whether I actually answered it or not.
I've noticed.
Yeah. Like I'll think about what I want to say or answer, and then I'll forget whether I actually verbalized it or not.
Yeah, and I can see that in your family. Your siblings, they're both way more indecisive even than you are. Mm-hmm. And you were called impulsive because you made a decision within a minute.
Faster than
where for them it might take an hour to even,
sometimes they won't
and
even
weigh
make
this
a decision,
and weigh that.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what happened in your family, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's that initial no from
right.
you is it's not no, it's really let me think about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's easy to take that quirk personally, and we see couples fight about those things, and it causes more distance, and then they put the guard up even more. And now they're just fighting at that superficial level, over little things, when if they would just take the time to truly understand where that quirk is coming from, then it's actually going to be a place that they can bond from. But then making fun of it later on is lighthearted. It's not something that's going to be mean.
Right.
Right.
It's like the British are so fabulous at insulting sweetly, right? And who's really good at that? Alec.
Oh.
Right? And he will...
And for all you UK listeners out there, it's such a place of endearment.
And so Alec he'll say something in the best way. Like, you'll be like, we're going to go do this. Do you want to go? He's like, oh, that sounds fantastic. I can't. Or something. Oh, like he'll make it seem like he's missing out when he for sure doesn't want to do it. But he's really good at that.
And it doesn't hurt your feelings, right? When he says it about something you want to go to, it doesn't hurt your feelings, right?
Even if it does, it doesn't last very long. Alec is easy with that. You know what I mean? There's such, I think, a strong bond that I don't really take offense. And he's mostly super funny. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't always like to do a lot of stuff. But he's got really wonderful qualities. that are in a different way. And that's, I think, what we're talking about, all these different kind of, like he's cooked us massive, all these meals, and they're fabulous. He's more of a homebody, though.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to go back now, which I will, to this idea of fighting and joking, because we did an episode, at least one, right, about humor in relationships, right, with your partner, how to make fun of your partner kind of stuff. So then this one, if we're incorporating this idea of fighting and comfort, I was just thinking about how when you have a big fight with someone, you know, your romantic partner or someone in the family, etc., right? Or like when we all fight, that part of fighting doesn't feel good, right? When it's a lot of anger and sadness and hurt and all of that. But I think that kind of discomfort amplifies the comfort when there is the joking. So I think of when Ray jokes with me, and you too, Jean, but it's still different, right? Because sometimes my brain doesn't know if you're joking, right? Are you serious or not? So I know that you're joking when there's a smile, right? Like a really good smile, like usually Ray does the eye shift. like he throws out his joke and then he shifts his eyes to see my response, right? And if I see him smiling, it's like very comforting, right? Because I think in the back of my head, I know you're joking with me because you love me and it's comfortable. So that's comforting to me.
That's interesting. We did some research, I think we talked about this before, about kids that grow up in a home where there is a lot of uncertainty and conflict, and they see a picture of a person smiling, or a picture of a person with a neutral face, or a picture of a person with an angry face, they're more likely to identify the neutral face as a problem.
Right.
Because they can't read the situation because there wasn't proper emoting in the house.
Mm-hmm. There's always like unpredictability in their home, and so they're always on edge.
So I could see if someone has that where it would be difficult for them to discern, oh, they're just kidding versus they're not. And it might activate something even if they are joking 100%, but it feels like not maybe safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the things that take time in relationships to really understand, like our partner's joking language. And, you know, if this is really something that is fun and lighthearted and we can tolerate because we're in this relationship and we're not going to like everything about each other, or if it's something's a problem and they're joking about it.
Well, that goes back to building that bond and understanding your partner and what their intentions are, where they're coming from, you know, and building humor along with your conflict resolution skills. I think they go hand in hand. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Ange, is that they do lend to each other, you know, in developing the relationship.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you say over time those things have changed?
Well, first I'll say of what you're talking about, although in ways it's unclear, but yeah, maybe that's the case for me. Like being around uncertainty, and then, you know, especially when we started out with, Jean, you didn't joke with me so much, right? That's it, like that's not your style, right? At least with me. Whereas Ray, that's what you want to do all the time. So yes, so it was harder. Now it's gotten easier, right? But could you ask your question again to make sure I understand it?
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking about, like, even with Ray and I, like, if I think we joke differently with each other now than we used to. And I was just wondering if you had that experience too of, I mean, you've been part of our family for how many years? 11 something?
12.
12 years. So not only are you around us for 12 years, but you also have gotten 12 years older. And that happens obviously to all of us. The longer we're in a relationship, the older we are and the more time we have with each other. And so I think it does change over time. Do you think?
Yeah. And I guess in some ways it's hard to remember what was the beginning like, to really point at that this is different now. Yeah, I think it changes. And maybe I joke more than I ever did, right?
Yeah, I would say. I would say you joke more, which is comforting.
You know that scene in Dumb and Dumber where they're playing in the snow and they're having this little casual snowball fight, and then the guy goes full on the girl and like smashing her face in the snow and like really pummeling her, that's how you used to be.
What I used to be?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like if I was joking with you, like on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 3, you'd come back with a 9. And it was like the sledgehammer thing. And you're not like that anymore. Mostly.
So you're saying I won.
You've mellowed. Right? It seems much more like a synergy. There's more of a flow to it than the rough edges that we had in the beginning. It's more banter. It's lighthearted. It's not like,
Well, that would just lend to development over the years. Yeah. And it's very easy for couples to not get to that place of refinement, in their humor or banter or even their fighting skills.
And I would say there's times, especially, for both of us, and probably you too, Ange, where we're just more sensitive and you can't joke. It's like one of those times that it's going to instantly go to conflict because the mood you're in or the stress levels that you have or whatever pressures are going on in your world, that it's like, I need to let off some steam. So guess what? If you joke with me, it's probably going to open a floodgate.
And I wonder if, in any relationship, you could give a signal of that, right? Like, this is not the time.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And it not necessarily go into a fight.
If you're good. Yeah.
If you know your partner, right? You would get to a point that that, this is a little too soon. I'm not going to, I'm going to give some space a little bit here because I say anything, some pots and pans are going to be flying around. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today on Couple Synergy. Our passion is in helping couples and people have happy and healthy relationships, and this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners.
And thanks, Ange, for joining us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Yeah, and then we can get back to joking around.
Yeah.
For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed our show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, our home study course, the Couples Weekend Intensive, and our premier coaching program called Couple to Couple, look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.